House in Baltimore, and for both the Orioles, who will be in Cleveland, as well as the Ravens in Cincinnati. But before they get out of here, the Pinstripers did a little damage on Monday. We are turning our full attention now to some Oriole baseball, as well as the Yankees and the Red Sox and all of these wild card competitors that sit in front of and around the Orioles. Eric Boland is a longtime baseball beat writer for Newsday Sports up in New York. He is the Yankees beat writer. He is here on a work junket in Baltimore, talking all things Pinstripes and Orioles. Hey, man, you and I talked in the offseason several times. I always enjoy your visits, and I don't know that anybody thought that the Yankees had sort of wire-to-wire playoffs in them. But that's kind of how this thing's gone, right? From the beginning of the year, they've looked like a playoff team. They looked even better than that for a little period of time, but they still look formidable, and certainly over the weekend and here in Baltimore with a month left, the Red Sox should be nervous. I mean, it looks like the Yankees want to go chase them, right?
Yeah, I mean, Nestor, they've arrived a year early. I mean, all the moves that they made last year at the trade deadline, where they sold off Andrew Miller and Carlos Beltran, and to a lesser extent, Ivan Nova. But when they made all of those trades, and of course, Aroldis Chapman, which netted them, one of the top prospects in the game in Gleyber Torres. All of those moves were made with the idea that this team was going to be primed and ready to contend in 2018. And then all of a sudden they got out of the gate this year at 38 and 23, 15 games over 500. And that cushion allowed them to kind of go through a stretch where, they played really sub-500 baseball, but they never dropped. And the worst they got in that stretch was, I think, 7 games over 500. So, that big cushion that they built up early in the year allowed them to work through some things, some subpar performance. They had a bunch of injuries. Every team, of course, has those during the course of the season. But it looks as though with Holiday coming back and Castro coming back and Greg Bird coming back and Masahiro Tanaka suddenly the last 3 weeks or so pitching the way he did his previous 3 years in New York, they have the look of a team that if they don't win the division, if they even still get that wild card and somehow win that game, they're going to be one of those tough outs, one of those teams that nobody wants to play.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the fast start. Look, the Orioles had a fast start as well, and there's an Aaron Judge factor there, right? That was thought to be the Sanchez factor, and you sort of want to gravitate to anything that's working there from a Yankees perspective. But seeing them come in here, boy, they've also nurtured some pretty good baseball players before this sort of new group came around. And I think you look up at after Labor Day and you see the Castros and the Gregoriuses really turning into outstanding middle-of-the-lineup kind of players. I remember when they were just sort of the salt and pepper for the dish. They're kind of the main course right now, right?
Well, look, I mean, Didi Gregorius, that trade is going to go down as maybe the best of Brian Cashman's time with the Yankees. Because they essentially, it was a 3-team trade, and they needed to replace Derek Jeter, you remember. They basically got Didi Gregorius, who looks like an all-star caliber shortstop and has for a couple of years, for Chad Green. I'm sorry, not for Chad Green, for Shane Green.
Shane Green.
Who's a setup guy in Detroit now. So, this is, I really think that when Cashman's tenure is done as Yankees GM, and who knows how long it's going to, it's been 20 years and he's still a relatively young man, but that's going to be a top 5 deal, I think, because you replaced an iconic shortstop, one of the greats of all time, a Mount Rushmore Yankee, or close to a Mount Rushmore Yankee, in Derek Jeter, and it was a seamless transition, and he actually got significantly better. Not from Jeter in his prime, perhaps, but certainly from the Jeter in the last, 5 years of his career or so.
It's fascinating. Eric Boland joining us here from Newsday. He's covering the Yankees in town for a couple days here and watching some baseball. When you make mistakes, and look, the Red Sox had the Sandoval mistake. We're going to find out whether the Price thing is a mistake, but I think anybody that's chatting up Dennis Eckersley in that way on a flight is a mistake, in my opinion. But, the Yankees with Ellsbury, I don't know if that's a mistake or not. Certainly at the time, they were stealing away one of the great young Red Sox players and all that stuff. But, boy, these organizations, whether it's Sabathia, whether it's, Teixeira at the end or A-Rod, they suck up so much oxygen as well as money with these $30 million baseball players. I'm going to be fascinated to see how the Orioles are going to deal with that bloat when it's Chris Davis time, because it already feels like it's that way at 224 in the All-Star break, and you got him batting 7th or 8th in the lineup every night. But, there's 5-6 more years of this left to go here. The Orioles are one of those teams that really have a hard time overcoming that, where the Red Sox and the Yankees just sort of, can shake it off, and Barry Ellsbury at the bottom of the order, and no one seems to give him a hard time hitting 250, right?
No, I mean, and he's probably, if you're polling Yankee fans of least popular Yankees, Ellsbury's been on the list for some time. But it's just one of those. Look, you talk about the big contracts. It's something that Hal Steinbrenner, for several years, really going back about 5 years, talked about wanting the franchise to shed themselves of, and it's been a slow process. And you saw, with the expiring contracts of Teixeira and CC Sabathia at the end of this year, they're still paying the last year of Alex Rodriguez's contract, but it's not as odious as it was. The Ellsbury contract, if you gave anybody truth serum in the organization, I think they would have told you early on that was a mistake. They still have 3 years of him left on it, but you're right. They can absorb something like that and just sort of move on in a way that other franchises aren't able to.
We are on the line with Eric Boland. Please follow him at newsday.com as well as at eBoland11 out on Twitter. He has wonderful golf photos on his Twitter as well as an occasional celebratory Yankee photo or two. Are you shocked by all of this? And certainly the way they dealt back in, and the Orioles are going to get a look at Sonny Gray, and we've seen that in the past as well, that winning the trading deadline and being able to bring in an arm, and we've seen Verlander move last week as well, and everybody's looking for that sort of deal. Hey, the Orioles had that deal, right? Forget Hellickson, which people were questioning and scratching their heads when they went on that deal, but the Beckham thing has literally been a differentiator for them being competitive or not competitive in this wild card race. He's just been an otherworldly type of addition over 30 to 45 days, which every team's looking for that kind of shot. They don't always get that when they make a deal like that.
No, absolutely not. And the Orioles are one of those teams that, if you look at from the Yankees perspective and a Yankees fan perspective, if you're polling them, which team would you absolutely not want to see in a one-game playoff scenario? When people ask me that question, I say it would absolutely be Baltimore or Tampa, because you would have played them already, if you're the Yankees, 19 times during the regular season. I wouldn't want any part of that. And regardless of how the season series has gone to this point with either one of those teams, again, if I'm the Yankees, I wouldn't want to see a division opponent. I would want to see anybody but a division opponent in that one-game scenario, because just taking the Orioles alone, look at how many guys in that lineup can completely wreck a game. And again, it's just one game situation. So you get a walk, a blue pit, and then Manny Machado steps into one, or Beckham, when the order turns back around, steps into one, or Davis, or whoever. Any number of guys that have hit the Yankees, by the way, over the years. And I didn't even mention Adam Jones. So I mean, I think the Orioles. I think the New York Yankee fans were probably a little bit surprised that the Orioles were as far back as they were. And then certainly, like you said, Beckham just seemed to help re-energize them, and they're right back in the thick of things.
It's fascinating. I mean, Judge and Sanchez, and especially with Sanchez with the injury, and he certainly has come on, less at bats and all that stuff. What Trey Mancini has done here, outside of the spotlight, if Trey Mancini was a Yankee, you all would have fallen in love with him in the same way that Judge and Sanchez have had their 10 minutes of being larger than life. We do have some things to recommend the team here, and certainly over the next month, they've got to get better pitching. But I said, man, if that's the thing that's dangling is 9 innings at Yankee Stadium, winner take all, that's a real good scenario for the Orioles or the Angels or Seattle or any of those. I don't think it takes much to get fired up to fly into New York and play a one-game playoff. I mean, that would be kind of a larger-than-life kind of game no matter who they play. And I know the Yankees are working really hard to kind of avoid that thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, we've seen the winner of the wild card go on and do great things, and most famously probably in 2014 when the two wild card winners ended up playing each other in the World Series with Kansas City and the Giants winning that great 7-game series. But look, the Yankees 2 years ago hosted that game, and Dallas Keuchel came up here and threw 6 shutout innings, and the Astros coasted and won and moved on. And we saw the other side of town in New York last year when Madison Bumgarner did the same thing to the Mets. So it scares the heck out of a team that believes they can go a long way in the playoffs to play in that one-game scenario because, any number of things can happen, obviously. The one thing I will say that feels different about this one this year, and again with the caveat that you just don't know what's going to happen, but you don't see that great pitcher looming for any of those teams the way you did where, 2 or 3 weeks in advance, the Yankees knew they were going to play the Astros in the wild card game, and they knew they were going to see Dallas Keuchel, a guy that they never had hit before and still haven't hit. And
it's like Arizona right now. You know you're going to see Greinke, right? I mean, literally, right?
Right. Yeah. And so I don't see in the possible matchups for the Yankees that stud pitcher that scares the heck out of you. It doesn't mean that a no-name guy can't come into Yankee Stadium and pitch well. We've seen that a few times this year, actually, where a guy that doesn't have much on his resume pitches extremely well, and the Yankees lose. So, look, one of the genius things Major League Baseball, looking at this thing big picture, Nestor, did was adding a real incentive to win the division title. That was a weakness of the wild card system its first couple of years, is that they're really, you could almost game the system because you could make it so you could play a team that you would prefer to play in the first round of the playoffs. Having the one-game wild card winner go home places a premium on winning the division that wasn't there before, and that was, whether or not you like the wild card or not, and I know some people don't, that was a stroke of genius from the Major League Baseball standpoint to at least place a premium on winning the division.
Yeah, I mean, we're one of 7 teams trying to get to allegedly Yankee Stadium, maybe Fenway Park, I don't know. Who would be the Yankees pitcher in that? Would it be Severino just straight away, or would Sonny Gray be the guy by the end of the month that would be favored there by Girardi?
Well, I'll give you another wild card in there, and I'll just answer the question first and foremost. I'd be shocked if it wasn't Luis Severino. But Masahiro Tanaka, the way he's pitched his last 12 starts, he's got, I believe, a 2.92 ERA. He's looked very much like the pitcher he was the previous 3 years when he was the unquestioned ace of this team. So he would be a guy too that I think would get some consideration. But it's Luis Severino's without question. I mean, he's earned it. His consistency. He's going to get some Cy Young votes this year. I mean, that's going to be between Kluber and Chris Sale, obviously, but Severino's going to get some votes. He'll get a bunch of third-place votes, I guarantee that. He's earned that status, and he would start that game. Now, I will give you an asterisk to that. If, depending on how the schedule goes in the next 3 weeks, Severino may have to pitch a really, really important game on that Saturday or Sunday, and then that throws it up in the air because the wild card game would be on Tuesday. And so if they're in a must-win situation to even get into the wild card game, and they need to use Severino, then that, obviously would change the...
Well, if they're in it, that would compromise the Red Sox as well. If it came to that you would definitely see Chris Sale in a wild card game. I don't think any of the teams would have choices at that point if it does bunch up. And, hey, dude, this thing might bunch up. There might be 4 teams tied at the end. The Orioles, the Royals, the Mariners, whomever. And it might just be a sticky week all the way around. And I know that's sort of the worst-case scenario, best-case scenario for the commissioner. But, this thing is tight enough that it can be pretty ugly that week all the way around from a scheduling standpoint, right?
It could. I mean, you could have a playoff Monday to get into the playoff. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility, the way the teams are kind of, log jammed there, and so few games separating them, and, a combination of teams that have, very difficult schedules like the Yankees have, to some easier schedules the way Boston has, and then anything in between, and the fact that so many of the contenders are playing each other, that I wouldn't be surprised if you had something on a Monday that determined who would play on Tuesday.
He is Eric Boland. You can find him out at Newsday and all things Yankees. He is on the beat there. Boland11. Hey, man, before I go, you're a Cleveland guy, proud Cleveland guy. You and I have thrown it around a little bit at the Cavaliers and the woeful Browns, who we'll see next week. But the Orioles have to go to Cleveland this weekend. They look like the best team on earth this week, right?
Yeah, they really do, and I think it's 12 in a row with the win yesterday against Chicago, and they came in, and before the Yankees won 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox, the Indians came in and really laid it on the Yankees. winning a 3-game series, including a doubleheader sweep a week or so ago. They look good. They do have some injuries too. Andrew Miller's a key one, and Michael Brantley's out. They've got a couple of other guys in their lineup that are nicked up. But the big thing is their top pitchers are healthy, starting of course with Corey Kluber and Trevor Bauer. And Carrasco too, and so they really look like the team that made the run that they did last year all the way to Game 7 of the World Series. So even though the Astros have the best record right now, I think most people look at the Indians and see them as the biggest threat to come out of the AL. But again, I mean, I think the playoffs are going to be great. I mean, I think the Astros with Correa coming back are going to be very good, and obviously we'll see how Verlander fits in if he kind of gets a jolt. Being with a contender all of a sudden, their lineup is absolutely stacked. Boston's still dangerous. If the Yankees win the wild card, they're dangerous. And I would say the same thing if somehow the Angels or the Orioles or Twins win that wild card. I think they could be a dangerous 4 seed, whoever comes out of that wild card game. So, I think Cleveland right now, you would say looks the best, but a lot can happen over the next 3.5 weeks and probably will happen.
Boy, the storm happened in Houston, right? And the Astros have really responded to that. And, Cleveland's trying to chase them down. They haven't lost in 2 weeks, but this is going to be a real nice tournament in October. I hope to check in with you in a couple of weeks. Eric, thanks for taking a little time. Enjoy the crab cakes while you're here. Don't eat anything tourist style, and enjoy the baseball. We'll catch you further up on the road, okay, man?
All right, sounds good, Nestor. I appreciate it as always.
Always a pleasure. Eric Boland, you can follow him, E. Boland, that's Boland, and the number 11. Yankees beat writer and a political junkie and a proud native of Cleveland, but covering the Yankees and one of our favorite dudes to have on off the Yankees beat here in town. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world you happen to be. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That's all done digitally, and it's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Last but never least, any breaking news, and there was a lot of that over the weekend, certainly with the roster maneuverings and the things going on with the Ravens and setting their starting lineups for Sunday. You'll get all that first in the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Kolatzis will be here on Thursday, driving you home. It is the SSV on WNST as well. That's Thursday, 3 until 5. I am a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net is the way to reach me anytime, anywhere. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. If you're a traveling Ravens fan going to London later on in the month, we do have an event on Saturday from 11 until 2:52. It's at the Fox at XL bar in the Docklands, East London area. It's very close to the Emirates cable car. We are going to be taking the Emirates cable car at 2:52 across the River Thames to the O2 Arena. Little old school purple storming in London on a beautiful afternoon, hopefully there. If the weather holds up, it'll be one of the great days of your young life if you're joining us in London. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.